have converted their trade jurisdictions of the seas under admiralty onto the land, and then use linguistic capital and connotative linguistics over the years to convince the people through misinformation that their corporate operations of the United States Corporation Company is indeed legitimately operating under the sovereign authority on the land. However, because they are not really the people of the land, this is one of the major reasons why they operate. All the U.S. corporate entities are operating under admiralty and maritime jurisdictions. And people need to know why. Like, people will talk about, the maritime law operations of all U.S. corporate government operations. That's really why, because they're not the people of the land. But by them having or taking control of the information platforms, suppressing erudition and the seven liberal arts, and instituting the General Education Board, 1902, it has taken them only, what you would say, a few generations to really dumb the masses down. And except for some of the elders who have passed form, and some of the children of those elders who are, we refer to as the elders today, most of them don't talk about these things because they're rejected or they're suppressed. And due to that fact, many of the youth or the younger generations are absent of that fundamental, vital information. So they've been convinced. They've been convinced that the United States is a country when it's actually a corporation under the popes of Rome. Another question I'll present to you, for you to answer for yourselves: is the Pope of Rome the super boss of all government agencies, as well as the super boss of the Vatican? The answer is yes. So again, if we're going to solve some of the economic and social and political problems that we're faced with today, and the fakery that has been used to promote schism and schismata under the guise of race problems and race hostilities and things like that, which is actually a mind control war tool system set up via United States Corporation Company agencies and guised as the nature of national, what you'll call controversies between different peoples, etc., which was a total fraud, etc. They have used that paradigm to promote schism in order to conquer the people and to maintain the power of the Roman Curia members. All of that comes under the guise of the fake title, socialism, or social engineering title, racism, which is a total fraud. And of course, that is derived from the taxidermy operations of Carlos Linnaeus and Frederick Johann Blumenbach, etc., and a lot of their mentors, etc., and adopted within the U.S. Corporation Census Bureau, etc., for mind control systems and to keep people divided. And this is why you don't see them talking about nationality. You'll see them talking about caste systems and colors. Now, they'll refer to humans as different colors. The green people versus the brown people versus the white people versus the black people versus the pinstripe people. And people have bought into that, not knowing that they were actually being groomed under linguistic capital. That's a term that they use in government structure. And of course, in linguistic communications, they refer also as semantic connotative linguistics in order to set what you call trends or paradigms to introduce false concepts via connotative linguistics among the people for the purpose of actually injuring the people. And because that is the norm with most people, a lot of times when you're presenting to them proper grammar construction or true chronology and history, etc., it seems strange to them because for so many generations, particularly since the early 1900s, the people have been operating under the skull and bones operations of Frederick T. Gates and John D. Rockefeller. And so the so-called educations or the drawing out of them in the name of education was not really designed to make the people erudite, but was in fact designed to make the people docile and also to mold them into different positions of Job that you'll see in the Bible so they could steal their resources. And the Job is not translated, but you just take the long O and give it a short, grammatical short, and it becomes job. And many people don't know that the word job or the stealing of the people's labor actually was metaphorically adopted from Job of the Bible for the mystical mind control systems by which the priesthood get the people to deny their own nature of divine order that they will designate as God, and in the process steal all of their property, all of their processes, all of their labor, etc. And so this is really what you're dealing with. And the metaphors or the stories that are told in the Septuagint and the Bible, etc., in relationship to that, you may look at as some of this following, which World Pastor Tony Alamo also shared with people as he traveled around the world. Quote unquote, Pope Secrets by World Pastor Tony Alamo. The Vatican is posing as Snow White, but the Bible says that she is a prostitute. Quote unquote, the great whore, a cult. That would be listed at Revelation 19, 2. And she uses government agency branches in every country, including the United States, as her vicious little dwarfs. And the more power and control she gets in government, the more she will fade away into the background in her quote unquote Snow White disguise, so that government will be used and blamed for all her evil deeds. Now, the reason is to enforce the laws that harass, that malign, that destroy, and that censor everyone and every idea that is not Roman Catholic, so that she can sit as the satanic queen, quote unquote, the big whore. And because of her age old desire to control the world government and the church, the serpent like Vatican has infested the world and the United States government with so many of her zealous, highly trained, and dedicated Jesuit devotees that she now controls the United Nations, which she, the Vatican, created. The White House, the Congress, every state, every federal, every civic and social government agency, including the United States Department of Labor, the IRS, the FBI, the FBI, the Supreme Court, the judicial systems, the armed services, the state, the federal, and other police, also the international banking and Federal Reserve systems called the Illuminati and Angitur, labor unions. 3. The mafia and most of the heavyweight news media all belong to the Vatican. And for those who may have missed it, the Angentur is Agentur, for those of you who are doing research. So a lot of these, what you call riots and social unrest situations that you're seeing taking place across the country are actually operations of members of the Roman Curia to actually create disorder, dishevelment, din, death, etc., because it's also a death cult, etc. And the Vatican itself is a cult, a death cult, and is very close to replacing. This is what you're experiencing in these days with these confusions about the so-called election and other things that have been going on. Now, keep in mind, this information was presented actually years ago and shared, etc. But it's meeting what you're seeing today. The Vatican cult is very close to replacing the United States Constitution with her one world satanic, quote unquote, canon laws of death to the heretic, and that is anyone that is not Roman Catholic. And the General Lafayette, President George Washington's most respected aide and general, prophetically stated, if the liberties of the American people are ever destroyed, they will fall by the hand of the Roman Catholic cult's clergy. Now, for those who don't understand that relationship in modern times, do the research with relative to Lyndon Baines Johnson after they murdered John F. Kennedy, and where he set up the 501c3 agreement to control, quote unquote, black Negro marching preacher assigned leaders under the 14th Amendment operations, etc., to deceive the people into thinking that the tax exempt status afforded them was relative to God and Jesus when it's actually the popes of Rome through the IRS. That's why the filing is filed with the Inquisition Revenue Service, because they are the God who is ruling the agency operations. That's a fact. Now, today we see the climax of detailed plans given in excerpts from a speech given by nearly 50 years ago in Australia by the Roman Catholic Archbishop Gilroy. The Roman Catholic motto is ourselves alone for fellow Roman Catholics. We must defeat all heretics, i.e., anyone who is non-Catholic, at the ballot box. Now you understand the problems that they're having with so-called elections. Quote unquote, the Holy Father states that negative tactics are fatal. The demands of the Holy Father, who they designate as the Pope, who is also referred to as the Vicar, so they got rid of the principle of Yeshua or Jesus, and he is the substitute, i.e., the Vicar. He claims God of this world, and thus all the agencies of government come under the authority of the popes of Rome. Now you understand the 3 stars at Washington, D.C., with the 2 bars. And these are the public services should be 100% Roman Catholic soon, and care must be taken that no suspicion may be raised when Roman Catholics are secretly given more government jobs than Protestants, Jews, and other heretics. Multi-millions of people have been slaughtered by the Vatican, and thus saith the Lord at Revelation 18:24, history bears record to this fact. During the Roman Catholic Inquisition in Europe, 68 million people were tortured, maimed, and murdered by this huge sect of death cult. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre accounted for the butchering of as many as 100,000 Protestants. President Abraham Lincoln blamed the papacy for the Civil War in these words. In reference to the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln stated, this war would never have been possible without the sinister and secretive influence of the Jesuits. And we owe it to purpury, that we now see our land reddened with the blood of her noblest sons. And Lincoln added, I am for liberty of conscience in its noblest, broadest, and highest sense, but I cannot give liberty of conscience to the Pope and to his followers, the Papists, so long as they tell me through all their councils, theologians, and canon laws that their conscience orders them to burn my wife, strangle my children, and cut my throat when they find their opportunity. Because of Abraham Lincoln's many exposés of the Vatican, he was put to death just as he foretold. Yes, Lincoln was assassinated by the Jesuits under Rome's instructions. The Vatican hasn't changed since Mr. Lincoln's time. John F. Kennedy's fatal mistake. When John F. Kennedy was asked by the Vatican, are you going to go along with the Roman Catholic canon law or the United States Constitution? Mr. Kennedy answered them by saying the U.S. Constitution. And this was President Kennedy's fatal mistake. His assassination was ordered by Rome, then planned and carried out by Jesuits, just as President Lincoln's was. Anyone who knew too much about Mr. Kennedy's assassination was taken care of too. When America cried out for an investigation, Chief Justice Earl Warren, a member of the Vatican's secret Knights of Columbus, was recruited to do the investigation. He did a lot of the double talking and shuffling as he was supposed to, and then, after a sufficient period of time, closed the investigation. And like the Pope says, negative actions are fatal. Remember that President Kennedy was a great admirer and student of Abraham Lincoln and knew what Mr. Lincoln knew. World War II, with all its casualties of over 30 million deaths, 6 million Jews, the Holocaust was conjured up and sponsored by the Vatican. Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco were all members of this sect, the Roman Catholic cult, to win the world, not for Christ, but for the Vatican, the Antichrist. The turmoil in Central and South America, the tyranny under Jesuit-trained Castro in Cuba and throughout the Caribbean, and the terrorism in Lebanon and Ireland today are the Vatican's handiwork. Now can you see why God calls the Roman Catholic cult the mother of every abomination on earth, set at Revelation 17 and 5. The Vatican knew that after World War II, many people were wise to the fact that the war was a Vatican inquisition, and so they had to use one of their famous diversionary tactics and open the John Birch Society to get everyone thinking and talking about communism, which the Vatican also sponsors, instead of the true culprit, which is the Vatican. And this was a great success for them. The Vatican also sponsors every major terrorist group in the world. The reason for this is to keep people's thoughts on unexplainable, insane tragedies that their terrorist groups are committing while the Vatican is busy undermining all governments of the world so that they can have world dominion, papal power. And when terrorist news hits, it is so shocking that it minimizes the news of the Vatican taking away the United States Constitution and of all the people being deprived of their religious freedoms, being jailed, the schools and churches being closed. And this is the real thing that the Vatican is after, though world control of our religion and our government. The more insane, the more bizarre, the more unreasonable, and the more unexplainable the terrorism is, the better. The Vatican's heavyweight news media also keeps you busy thinking about it all. And now that they are exposed with their modus operandi, they will soon, with their media and the President of the United States, who just joined them, be the driving force of a campaign to stop all this terrorism that they have created themselves, to make everyone believe that they are good and godly and that they could never be the sponsors of anything like this. An update such as the Terry White negotiating in Lebanon. Keep this in mind, put this in timeline. This is years ago. Jim Jones, a Roman Catholic Jesuit deacon posing as a Christian, was sacrificed, not with poisoned Kool-Aid, murdered along with his flock by the Vatican to make the world look narrowly and suspiciously upon innocent Christian retreats. And these 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him, a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that deviseth in wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren. That's in Proverbs 6:16-19. And all these things that God hates, the devilish Vatican is. Did you ever notice that the Vatican controlled U.S. customs and immigration? We cannot get out of this country without going through the third-degree searches and radar, etc. But in the 1960s, when the Jesuit Vatican-trained Timothy Leary led the nation's youth into drug addiction, immigration and customs seemed unable then, as they do now, to detect thousands, tens of thousands of pounds of narcotics and drugs entering into our shores, and a once fair nation via the mafia, which launders all of its illicit,